You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning. I'm here today to introduce you to Adam Pretorius. Adam is a local real estate agent with Lepic Krager, owns Elevation Homes, and lots of other things. So welcome, Adam. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
So a lot of people think What's Happening is concerning real estate. You're the first one to talk about real estate. How about that?
I'm flattered. I'd love to talk about it with you.
It's great. The things that you've been doing, I see a lot of things on Instagram and Facebook, and I always marvel at what you put out there for the real estate industry, the construction industry, everything you do. It looks pretty cool. So,
Thank you.
So let's get started. So I always like to start with my guests with, tell me about yourself. Where did you come from? How did you get here? What got you interested in construction, real estate? So if you don't mind, open up and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun, and I'm excited to be on here. I'm about 14 years now in the industry here in real estate. Wow, it seems like a long time ago, but I got my license during this crazy year, 2009, during the recession.
That was a great time, huh? A great time to start. What were you thinking?
But we take it for granted here in Iowa City, but it was kind of like the Shire. Like everywhere else was the Mordor, and it was burning, and there was this recession and this crazy thing happening, and everybody in Iowa City just kept going on with life, and it was normal. And real estate was booming here. We had a 4% increase per year, 2009, 2010. People were still buying houses here, and big piece of that's going to be being a university town, so we're quite sheltered. But it was an interesting year to get started in real estate. And
why'd you get into business?
Yeah,
what were you thinking about? What would you do before?
So before I was doing, I majored in finance, and I was doing some accounting and other jobs that are kind of more boring and number oriented. But I always wanted to do and studied marketing. And that's what real estate is. It's really marketing. It's more of the customer service people job. And I think it's a great industry. I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, there's no roof over your head on how high you want to go. I mean, it's what you put into it, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a stressful job, but it could be fun and very rewarding.
It's perceived as maybe riding around in a big car and looking at listings and looking at homes, but it's a lot different than that once you dive in there, isn't it? Especially with what you do in development construction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you get into it, I mean, we all think like you're in real estate and all you're doing is sales, but there's so many other avenues and different business ventures and components to just doing real estate, which you hit on. I mean, you got property management, you got development, you can be doing income properties, maybe you're working with builders. So there's a lot of components, I think, in different aspects to real estate that make it kind of a fun and challenging, but always innovative and a great industry to be in.
So go back to, you're in school, you like marketing, and you saw real estate, you're intrigued by it. Did you own any real estate? Did you know anybody that owned it? I mean, something attracted you to get into the real estate business, right?
Yeah, I give that credit to my wife.
Okay.
So she studied architecture actually in school, and then in midway in her studying architecture, Iowa State, she kind of betrayed all of us here at Iowa.
It's a good architectural school. Right?
It's a good school.
Right.
But she started there, and then midway through, she realized she didn't want to sit at a desk for the rest of her life. So she kind of gave up on that and did something different. But then she slowly came back into it. She started flipping houses and remodeling homes on her own. And she really liked the hands-on and the construction aspect. And so she kind of inspired me to reattune where I was doing in my career, look for something that's, whatever you do in life, it's got to be fun. It's got to be challenging. If it isn't fun and it's not challenging, you got to do something new.
Well, real estate's fun and challenging, right?
It's very challenging. It can be fun at times and not so some other times, but
a lot of challenges.
So that's what she was doing. And so she was remodeling houses, and she kind of inspired me and was kind of my inspiration to do something new and get into real estate.
There's a lot of shows right now, and I don't watch them all. Flip and flop. And flip some of them's in California. Some of that stuff in California, they buy stuff for $800,000. To me, it's like $100,000 here. And they flip it for $1.5 million, and they just fix the kitchen and the bathrooms up. But so, can you tell us more about what flipping means? I mean, some people listening might go, "Well, wait a minute, how do you do that?"
Yeah. So, no, that is a great question, because I don't think a lot of people understand what flipping is. And to me, actually, the word flipping is kind of a pet peeve of mine in the real estate industry. I mean, when you're remodeling a house, you have a flip. To me, would be just like lipstick on a pig. You're doing a little bit. You might
Right.
change the flooring, do some paint, then you're putting it right back on the market, trying to turn and make some money. And that's where the word flipper came from. You buy it, you flip it, you make money, you move on. But then there's a whole industry in between of contractors that are doing remodels and renovations, and that's a little more in depth. And when I think of a remodel and a renovation, I'm thinking of you're moving a couple walls, you're opening spaces, you're reinventing spaces, you're changing something that worked in the 80s to something that works in today's lifestyle. So you might have to reconfigure, make larger kitchens, go away from galleries, larger bathrooms, en suites, just changing floor plans in the way that the homes work for today's families.
Well, that sounds like, so is that where the ideas of elevation came up through Amy, your wife?
Yeah, so she
Tell
was
me
the
about
founder for Elevation Home Builders.
Okay.
She had a contract and no compete working with the Peninsula Development Company out in the peninsula
Okay.
for years, and then that project came to an end. And as it came to an end, she released that no compete and started her own company on her own. And so, one of the things that she really took to heart and as the main culture of that company was design. She believes that when we're building a house, it's design first, and then we figure out um, the rest of the component of the building process after that. So she'll start with what is she looking for materials and finishes? What is she looking for in the floor plan? Once she kind of gets an idea of those, then she'll develop the actual blueprint and the architectural background and then figure out the construction process. So I think that was just a different way of thinking about construction. And obviously she's done really well at it. And her company's been quite successful.
Well, part of one of the keys to real estate, the way I see it, and it's kind of neat that Amy did that because I think most of the time the ladies buy the house. The guys were interested in maybe the basement or the man cave or the garage, but you better cater to the ladies because that's who's going to buy the house, and they're thinking about their families, their children, and so anyways, to flip a house, you'd look at specific areas or just whatever presented yourself, and then you'd remodel it, open it up, make it more current, right?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with finding good bones. You have to find good bones. Of course, the age old is location, so it has to be the right location for it. But really, it's finding a way to take an existing space and then open it up and make it into something new. And she had a real good eye for that. I mean, she'd look at homes that I didn't understand what she was going to do with this thing, and she could really reinvent it and reform it and reshape it for today's lifestyle.
So, if you were talking to somebody young that's just getting out of school like you did, how would you talk to somebody that says, Adam, I'm thinking about getting into real estate business, or I'm thinking about becoming a general contractor,
Yeah.
or you know what, that development stuff looks pretty easy. I'm going to dive into that. How would you? I'm sure you would appreciate their enthusiasm. But what kind of advice would you give some younger person who really wants to get in and become let's say, start out with being a real estate agent?
Yeah. If you're thinking about being a real estate, think twice.
Yeah.
But if you decide that this is really what you want to do, I think when I notice some traits in good realtors, I think I'm looking at the ease. Are they excited? Do they have empathy? And that excitement's really important because there's a lot of long days, a lot of hard days, a lot of work. It's a commission-based industry, and that's tough. You have to be your own boss, your own CEO, your own marketing manager, your own CFO, your own, sales manager. You have to do all that. And so you have to be very disciplined, and discipline is key. But you have to have empathy and be able to relate to your clients and have that customer service component. And there's gonna be a lot of long, hard days ahead of you. I think the biggest tip I would have, if you're really looking to get in real estate, you need a mentor. You need a really good mentor, and start with that.
Who was yours?
Mine was Alan Swanson. He was a great mentor, and
Yeah.
I think it's important that you have someone that's already successful and able to teach you and help cater you along. And Alan did a great job at that. I mean, he was very experienced in marketing himself, came from marketing background,
Right.
and we kind of focused our real estate career on marketing first, because that's why you hire an agent. Anyone
Right.
can put a sign in the yard.
Right.
Get the marketing down, work on your customer service, and then of course you have to be knowledgeable. Learn it all.
One thing's that you mentioned commission base, and I don't think a lot of people understand that when they're dealing with real estate agents or just in society at all. So I always try to tell people, let's say you've worked for 2, 3, 4 months, you've got a sale, it still has to close, appraise, go through all the little hoops that we go through. And we're paid well too. I mean, it isn't that it's a free service, but you get paid hourly if you figure it out per hour really well if you're good at it. But picture you go for 3 or 4 months and you know that paycheck's coming in and it doesn't close.
Yeah.
How do you eat? How do you survive? So most people, and I'd put 99.99%, rely on a salary.
Yeah.
That's their safety net. As a real estate person, most, not always, maybe some have implemented plans where they get a little bit of a base or something, which I think is good, by the way, in the real estate industry. But can you imagine going for months, not making any money? And then it's right in front of you, and then there's no check there.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about discipline, I think that's fantastic because you are right. You have to be disciplined.
If you don't have discipline, I mean, it's going to be a long road ahead. I mean, the simple truth is, and the hard numbers is, I would say about 9 out of 10 agents don't make it.
Right. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think the discipline is a big component to it. I think you see someone else be successful and you think I can do it too, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. It's hard on your family. I mean, even about 5 years in my marriage, I had a marriage counselor because I'm working too much, sacrificing the work over that personal life. And you need a work-life balance. You get better at that, but you're creating your own systems. You're creating your own processes, and all that's very important. But that discipline and is really hard to get started. And I think a lot of the industry is a sink or swim. And I think that's really tough because you're going in, you can get your license. Anyone can get a license. It's got a low entry barrier. But once you get in, figuring out how to do it, how to discipline, what's my daily schedule? What are my processes for this? What are the systems I need to set up to make sure that my marketing is good? The systems I set up for buyers, the systems I set up for sellers. I don't think people take the time to sit down and think like a CEO.
Right.
And you have to write this down, map it out. And I think the easiest way to do it is deconstruct it. I think you need to take your plan and then you need to set goals. I think a lot of us don't set goals. I can't tell you how many agents I meet. And I go, what's your volume for the year? I don't know. You don't have a tracker? How do you track everything? Do you have a CRM?
Yeah.
No. You got to have that. You got to have goals. You got to set benchmarks. Are you hitting it? Where are you at? What do I need to do to improve? You got to continue to self-evaluate. I mean, you and I know how to get good abs. We have to work out 15, 30 minutes a day. And I do an ab workout. I only do 5 minutes. Why don't I do an extra 10 minutes? I don't know. I guess I don't give it enough value. But it's the same thing in when you're doing your business. You have to figure out how to get there. But even if I tell you how to do it, you have to do it. And a lot of people just don't do it. And getting there it's tough. It's competitive and it's very, very challenging.
How important are goals?
I think goals are the most important thing that you can do. In every organization that I belong to, whether it's a construction company, development, some of my other entrepreneurial side projects, and then of course my real estate career, I do an end of the year business analysis. We do strat planning, and that is do an entire year review. What went well, what didn't, and then we got to plan the year ahead. What do I need to do differently? What is my goal for the year? What are my benchmarks I need to get there? What are my check-ins? What are my accountability? You need to set SMART goals. You need to make sure you hold yourself accountable, and you need to follow up and follow through. And I think goals are very important. I mean, if you want to go run a 10-mile triathlon, you're not going to just get up and do it. Right. You have to work your way up to it. It's the same thing in business. It's the same thing in life.
How do you hold yourself accountable, or who holds you accountable for your goals?
And that's probably the biggest reason we see so much failure in the real estate industry is you have to hold yourself, and no one's accountable but yourself.
Right.
I think one of the traits I've noticed from some of the top sales professionals, and it's interesting because in the industry, as you know, the top 20% sell 80% of the whole market. I mean, that's in any industry, right? Yeah. But those top performers are some of the most insecure people I've ever met because they might be doing high volume, but I am constantly worried at the end of the year, how am I going to feed my family next year? Which is crazy because I look at my year past, but the insecurity that's there is that accountability trigger in the back of my brain. It's that fear, and that fear is what drives me and holds me accountable. Obviously, I mean, I did almost 35 million last year. The fact that I have that thought in the fall is crazy.
Right.
I'm saying it out loud. It's crazy. Right. But if I didn't have that fear, I wouldn't have that drive and that accountability that I need to continue to push and be the best I can be.
And when you started 14 years ago, you probably thought 30, 35 million, there's no way. I mean, you probably thought maybe 5 million, I don't know, 3 million.
2 years ago, I thought there's no way. I mean,
that's amazing.
But you don't do it overnight. I mean, you
No.
got to work your way up. I
Right.
mean, Watts has done it. Your company's done it. I mean, everyone has to set these benchmarks, these goals, and you keep working your way up.
Right. Did you come from an athletic background? I usually ask people that. I mean, how did you get so disciplined in your goals and strive toward things?
Yeah, I mean, I did run cross country and play ice hockey, but it wasn't big in my athletic background. But hey, both those sports require discipline and you work your way up. I mean, hockey, you got to learn how to skate, you got to learn, how to use a stick on a skate, and then cross country, you're hitting goals and you're trying to hit, the 5K, and you got to work up to it. I didn't just wake up one day and run a 5K. You got to practice.
I remember once I went to Fort Dodge to watch the, I don't know who it was. It's back when my daughter was at Regina. And they had really good cross country teams back then. And Bob Brown was the coach, a wonderful fellow, just a wonderful coach and mentor to all the kids. And I went to Fort Dodge, and I think he invited me. He said, well, have you ever been to a cross country meet? And I go, not really. So come to state. And I remember going to Fort Dodge, and I'm standing there, and that first 100, 200 yards, they were sprinting to kind of get positioned. I couldn't believe it. I thought it's just kind of a nice, steady pace, 5K or whatever they're running. And they were sprinting for quite a ways to get into it. And this is unbelievable. So way harder than what I ever imagined, and more difficult. The psychology of the run and what they were doing. And because once some of those kids started, they didn't slow down. I mean, they seemed like they were full bore the whole time, including jockeying for position. So, anyway,
but they're well disciplined, and that's how they did it.
Yeah, I find that a lot in sales folks. Somehow they come from a disciplined background, no matter what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Could be military, could be coaching, could be sports, could be something. And a lot of the top producers in real estate and construction, a lot of them were in some type of high school sports, college, or whatnot. I see that a lot. So let's shift gears a little bit, because I want to get into. I got so many things I want to talk to you about.
Oh, great.
Let's go into where you had some pictures of Amy. Your wife moved a house, and you said you had a funny story here. So let's have some fun here, and maybe Austin can pull up. I don't know in which order here. You can talk about the house and moving it. Was this your first project together?
Yeah, I met her while she was mid-project on this. So the second photo there, if we pull that up.
She was from West Branch, right?
That's right. And this house that we're looking at is an old farmhouse.
Looks familiar.
It's on the corner of IWV. No, I'm sorry. It was on the corner of Highway 6 and right over there by Fairway, not too far past there, a couple miles out. And the homeowners of this farm had built a new house, and you can only have one building per parcel.
Right.
So they had to either demo it or do something with it. So creatively, Amy said, well, it's got good bones. It's a 1930 farmhouse. They got Douglas fir, and we use number 2 pine now. And so it's a solid house. It's got a good frame.
Yeah.
Let's pick it up and move it. And an interesting fact here, Washington, Iowa has some of the biggest collection of building movers, and they have Guinness Book World Records there. I mean, there's a bunch of contractors and family-owned businesses, and they move structures all the time.
Yeah.
And so they picked this up. Amy said it was the nicest contractor till the day they had to move it, and they were a little stressed that day. So they picked this house up. And go to the third photo, I think there. They just lift this house up. Yeah. And where that old fireplace was, they ended up turning it on its side, and she actually rotated the house 45 degrees. But they pick this house up, they drive it down the highway, and they move it into town. And she found a subdivision that got permission for her to do it. I mean, it's going to be a brand new built house in the end. She took it all the way to the studs. And so she recycled this house and then added an addition onto it. And today, I think there's a photo of it finished. There it is today. So that was that window there with the arch is where the old fireplace was. And then she added the garage on. So a fun project. Of course, when you take a home down, 80% or more of it is new construction, and you have to be considered new construction. So in the end, I don't know if there was money savings, but it was a fun project and good to recycle an existing structure. And this was the first project that she did. And it was exciting, and it was good to see just how she thought and could conceive designs and ideas and innovate and put things together.
So she went to architectural school, because I can see by that there's a lot of architecture in that. Did she draw her own plans, or?
Yeah, she had a good eye for it. I mean, she could walk into space and she could see what worked and what didn't. And there's the addition of the garage, and so this is it. This was kind of inspiring and interesting to me. It kind of got me into real estate and thinking about just being innovative in general and innovation and thinking differently about how we approach things, building whatever, grabbing a home, moving it, doing additions, thinking about spaces rather than always start new. Maybe there's other options.
Yeah, good. So tell us a little bit about your family. You have a son.
Yeah.
And if you want to venture into it, I know you had a very hard situation about a year ago with your wife. She passed away. So you want to maybe just get into that a little bit with us and share some things that went on and talk about your son.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a tough year for me.
Yeah.
Gary. My wife had a scheduled surgery last year, and we had some complications, and unfortunately, I lost her.
Yeah.
And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But we have a beautiful son.
Yeah.
Looks just like her.
Great.
Dresses like dad now, but looks like her. But
I saw you got him a haircut here.
I did. Finally.
Yeah.
But that event was tough. It's challenging.
How'd you get through it?
As someone who really processes life on systems and processes, analytically, I tried to just find a way to move on and get through grief. And grief, unfortunately, is just not a rational process. It comes and goes unexpectedly, and it was tough. It was really hard. After a couple months, I sat down. I said, I can get through this, but I need to deconstruct this, figure out what are my fears, what are the things I need to overcome. And then I kind of mapped it out, and I set up goals of what I was going to do. How many months till I was going to start having more people over, having more events, getting social again, trying to feel normal, get back on schedule in life. And it was tough. I had a lot of love and support from my community, from my colleagues, from my friends. Yeah, I needed that. But it was a long process, but I'm feeling much better today, and it was a challenging time, and I think we spend so much time planning for the future, that we forget about the present, and I think that's important because everything in the future isn't as important if you don't have the present. And as we get older, our health, our careers, our job, our work-life balance, that's so important. And I've retuned and really put an emphasis on those things that maybe I hadn't give as much attention to prior to this event.
Well, when that happened, I mean, you had all of us were pouring out our support for you, and not just the real estate construction community, everybody. I mean, the whole community rallied behind you. So just so you know, and I'm sure you do know, that you had a tremendous outpouring of support and love for you and your family. So hopefully you felt that, and that'll always be there for you.
I did. Thank you. Yeah, the love was great, and that's what builds strong communities, strong relationships, and I really appreciated all the help that I got.
Good. I see when you talk about being present, a lot of times in our minds we're either reliving the past or we're racing into the future.
Yeah,
it's hardly ever where you even get a minute. Hey, let's just enjoy the coffee right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that was a great point you said. I really like that. If the one thing from this is if you can just stay present. Just stay present.
I think that
as much as you can.
I think there needs to be more value on that, and I think you're absolutely right. We just spent, and I think the work-life balance is the toughest, but you got to give attention to the present, and it's so important, and the people you have and the things you have now.
Yeah. So do you involve your son in the business, or do you involve him with things, or how do you do that work-life thing? Because I know as a real estate person, I know I was never around when my kids were younger. And, I think about that today. It's something like, hey, Dad, you're always out chasing a deal. And, what about reading a book to us? And they're right. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
How do you look at that today, or how does that help you with your boy?
I think since this last year, I've spent a lot of time where I spent so much thinking about how I spend so much time planning, blocking, scheduling out my business that I don't do it with my personal life.
Yeah.
And I've decided that I need to just pivot the same sort of mentality that I have for my work life to my personal life.
Yeah.
Good. Block off schedules and times to do vacations. I was really bad about that. I don't, I probably did one vacation every 2 years prior. Now I have 3 or 4 set up for this year.
Good.
Making sure that I'm scheduling some time and blocking it off to spend time with family. I mean, I think that's important. I think we get too emphasized on making money or your future or your goals for tomorrow that you forget about your present. And I think this is a good learning experience for me to learn from, to grow, to be stronger, and to focus on that. Because to your point, your kids growing up,
Right.
you need to be there with them. And so
goes by fast.
It does.
You
go by
probably hear
fast.
it from old guys like me all the time. Say, enjoy it, but it does. It goes so fast. And at the time when you're going through it, it may not seem like it, but it does.
Yeah.
It does go fast. So that's great. I'm glad that when you look at your day's going to be there tomorrow. In other words, what's your thoughts and what you're doing in construction, real estate? Tomorrow's tomorrow. It's not the same thing every day. In real estate, a lot of things are changing, but that work's going to be there. Your son won't always be there, and your time with him. So I think that's neat that you realize that, and that sounds cool. You're doing some great things here. I'm glad to hear that. So anyway, let's go back to, let's kind of move in a little bit. We've hit real estate sales. Let's talk about construction. So I know that you're heavily involved with elevation. You built some tremendous houses, some fabulous floor plans. And talk a little bit about construction and what you see as some things that are going on in construction that would affect everybody. Maybe we're going to interest rates. You could talk about your subdivision. You have a beautiful subdivision north of town. Anyway, let's talk about construction. How do you see that? What's going on in the construction business?
Yeah, I mean, construction, I think it's a really exciting time in the industry. I think there's a lot of challenges in it, as you know, and there's a lot of opportunities. And I think that might be good for some of the audience to consider what opportunities might exist for them. But I think there's 3 big variables with construction right now that are being discussed, and that is we have the supply chain issues that have just a rising cost of materials. I mean, we've seen them skyrocketed, the cost of everything from lumber to sheetrock to just appliances and products you're putting in the house. We got tariffs to deal with. A lot of these products aren't made here in the United States. The second thing is this labor shortage. You can't get enough people working in the construction industry.
It's for everybody, not just construction, and it's everywhere.
Everyone, but it feels like construction's one of the worst because as people are going to college and continued education, they've lost some of that skilled labor force. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there that if there's a high school student that's just not sure on their next path, maybe they should look into some of these skilled trades because they pay pretty well. They have a really nice pay base, and there's some good opportunities in there. And these local schools have a lot of education programs that they're offering to help people get the training they need to become licensed electricians and plumbers, and lots of opportunities there. But I think the third thing that we miss the most that isn't talked about in the press is land shortage. And can't make more of it. It's scarce, and land is very tough, and it's been changing a lot in recent years. The size of lots are smaller. Getting land passed through various municipalities and state and local and federal, it's taking longer, more time. Mm-hmm. And when we look at the housing crisis that we're in, what I think is most interesting about real estate is resales are based on the cost to build new, and we need new. And one of the reasons we're in this crisis is there's less new, there's less products, but there's less opportunities for those. But also, I think when we have these rising costs of new, it's rising costs of the resales. And there's a lot of discussion right now that the easiest solution to housing affordability is more housing. If we build more, it will bring the price down. Simple supply and demand economics that we study. But buildings just become so tough, and it's a challenge.
Well, it's also like, where do you find the ground? And then look at the infrastructure costs in ground. What it used to be when I first started to now, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. And a lot of it's the land, not just the land costs, it's the infrastructure costs and how you can build it to get them up and running, where you can even sell a lot. Let's go back to one thing you touched on. I think it's kind of interesting. I know when I was a kid, it was kind of like you need a 4-year degree. And I would encourage my kids all have 4-year degrees or more. The trades, and you and I are around trades all the time. fabulous people that do trim carpentry, fabulous cabinetry,
Hmm.
electricians, plumbers, carpenter. I mean, they're all really good
Skilled labor.
avenues to have the skill set and support your family or whatever you're supporting yourself. And brick masons, for example, my father-in-law was a brick mason, built churches, schools all over Nebraska. Uh, Tell us a little more about, if it was a young person saying, "Hey, Adam, what do you think about? I want to be a master plumber," or "What do you think about this business?" I know a lot of kids that are, get a 4-year degree and they get out and they can't find anything in that area they want to be in. What's wrong with just diving into a trade and making it happen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities there right now. I think it gets overlooked because we get set so much on this academic system, which
Right,
I mean, even if you do go do a 4-year degree,
right,
maybe come back and look at some of these skilled labor opportunities.
right,
There's a lot to learn from the degree just in thinking different, not necessarily skills that you need for a specific profession. I think there's just the thinking different, but then you could still come back and take some of these skilled for the skilled labors. And I think plumbers, electricians, these carpenters, these are all a lot of opportunities. There's
right,
huge labor shortage right now.
right.
And I think there's a lot of rewarding opportunities. They're fun. They're exciting jobs that I think that people need to consider as a potential as well.
It used to be maybe an afterthought, or you could do that in the summer.
Yeah.
But I think for young people today, get in a trade. Maybe you end up being a GC or a general contractor or do other things. But and then learn the components of a house.
Right. You
Uh,
start as a carpenter, but you
yeah,
might move to an electrician or you might move to becoming a general contractor in the end.
I just thought of something. I don't mean to skip around, but the folks may not know this, but you and I has a 4-year degree in real estate, and a lot of people don't understand it. In other words, you can have a major in real estate. And I've talked to several people that went through it, and a lot of them are CCIMs or the commercial brokers.
Hmm.
But there's a really outstanding degree that you can get, and the curriculum's fabulous at UNI. And I don't even think people know about it. And I highly encourage, if you're a young person and you want to get into real estate, check out UNI's program. It's amazing. And I know a lot of people that have come from future developers, future commercial brokers. It's more geared to that than just residential sales, but check that out. Let's go back to the supply chain. I remember when lumber went to the futures were 1,700. That was hard, and then down now to 400 or so. But I remember it seemed like obviously supply and demand, and it seemed like somebody out in the state of Washington or Oregon was just turning a dial because they could, and it was hard to get involved because construction you're 6 months out, or and it's forecasting development you're 2 to 5 years out. And how do you buy? Do you not buy? Is it going to get better? And how did you get through the supply chain issues then? And then how do you see it today?
Yeah, I mean, in lumber was one of many just tough things. I mean, there was a number of issues going on. You had floods up in Canada. You had less mills doing the work because
Right.
a lot of them went under during the recession. And then you had this poor lumber yard, the local lumber yard that's trying to decide, do I buy now? Do I wait a month?
Right.
Do I wait another month? When do I buy? Are we buying at the high? Are we buying? And then they buy, then they have this bulk that they paid maybe more than they should have, and then they have to offload. And it was just the pricing was just not. It was just so up and down. It was tough. And I think getting through that is you just had to keep going. I think when I always think of Warren Buffett that says, when things are good, people get greedy,
Yeah.
and when things are bad, people pull back. And I think when you look at it, people still need housing and the needs there. I think the best opportunities are when everyone else is holding off, you keep going. You just got to keep going. So with the builders I worked with the projects I was involved with, when those prices were so volatile, we just kept going. You dealt with it. You worked through it. You might have had to pay a higher price, but I tell you, the demand was there. It exceeded the supply, and we needed to just keep moving. But it was a tough time.
Right. Do you see the demand for new construction? Is it still there? How do you feel about the demand, housing demand? We talked a little bit about resales and new construction. What's the demand like right now?
I think the problem with that question I think is that there's different markets, right? Like you have your entry level, you have your middle market, you have your
Right.
luxury market, and I think it depends, and each market's a little bit different, and even your commercial market. But I think there's a lot of demand out there, particularly surprisingly in the luxury market right now. The luxury market is really moving. And that is just a lot of retuning of lifestyle needs since the pandemic. I think that's changed a lot of our prospective buyers' needs and wants. And I think creating new homes and products that cater to those needs is important. If you look at the new construction, I think you also got to look at the remodel sector. And the remodel sector is expected to grow 25 to 30% this year, says NAHB. And if the remodel sector continues the growth it's at, there isn't enough contractors to help with that. And I think that will become challenging to the point that people, rather than stay, will buy a new house. And so I think that remodel demand will push over a little bit to help with some of the demand then in the new construction. And I think new construction's got a very bright future as long as you can find the land to do it on.
Tell us about the luxury market. Is that $1 million up, or is there a price point? And then how has that changed since the pandemic? Are people looking at swimming pools, tennis courts, basketball courts, recreate fire pits? What's going on in that luxury market?
Yeah, and the luxury market's kind of my specialty. So,
right.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that you and I have seen that's interesting is $500,000 used to be a luxury market 2019 and earlier. Yeah. $500,000 today is an entry level home.
Right.
You know, right. When I think of the luxury market, I'm thinking of that 900 to $1 million plus, okay. And that might only be a 4,200 square foot home these days,
right.
because that's just what the costs have come up to. But I think the retuning has really focused on more bedrooms. And that isn't to say that we're having a need for more people in a household per se, more bedrooms, because you have homeschooling, you have spouses and working from home. You're going to have a home exercise room. You need these extra rooms as just designated spaces or hobby rooms. So I think more bedrooms is number one. I think having some sort of exercise or even an in-house court is really popular right now. I think that's really in high demand. The third thing is we've really ignored outdoor spaces. And when you buy most new construction, you have a tree in the yard and grass.
That's maybe two trees,
maybe two
inch
trees.
and a half.
Yeah, but I think this is retuning to maybe having a front porch, a deck, a screen porch, a patio, maybe a fire pit, maybe a pool, things like this. Those are really big amenities to buyers now. It doesn't necessarily need a wooded lot, but they might want privacy. They might want a fenced yard. I mean, fences have become very big discussion lately. But I think coming back inside, I think kitchen and baths, our attention to those is very important. So, our old bathroom, we have a single sink and, a shower and a toilet was fine pre-pandemic. Now it's a minimum of a double vanity, if not a makeup vanity. We're having at least a single toilet, if not two toilets in the bathroom. We're having a shower and we're having a separate soaking tub. And oftentimes I find the bathroom as big, if not bigger, than the size of the bedroom itself. And I think that's really important in the luxury market to today's buyers, where they want more of that spa feel. And then the kitchens have really become a big piece. People don't want just a functional kitchen. They want a designer looking kitchen. And that is getting rid of that microwave over the stove, having a more designer aesthetic, and then also making sure that there's more functionality. And so that is all the stuff that you previously put in those cabinets. They want large walk-in pantries, hide it, get it out of sight. We're also seeing a lot of barista stations and beverage stations come up. On the West Coast, they're even putting them like a wet bar in the bedrooms. And a wet bar in the dining room, which I actually recently did. And I'll say I use the wet bar in my dining room more than I use the wet bar in my family room. But I think these sort of extra little changes, as small as they are, they're big selling pieces to today's home buyer. And then the really big one is I think we're just on the cusp of getting to high performing homes, the quote unquote green homes, getting more insulation, the smart home technology, EV chargers, solar panels. I think all these things have become a big discussion. And then heat pumps. I mean, how incredible is it to think that heat pumps now outsell gas furnaces since 2020? There's more of those sold in the United States every year. I mean, that's fascinating. That's a huge shift of what's happening in the future.
So the pandemic created more people working at home.
Yeah.
And their children are at home on Zoom or whatever with their educational classes. And so when you look at a house, it's more than just a house. It's where you work out of, you live out of, you recreate out of, you relax in. I mean, it's just not you're driving down the road and going to your house. It's way more of an environment you've created.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly the way to look at today's homes, because when you look on your realtor.com, on your Zillows, what you're seeing is you're seeing 6, 7, 8 bedroom homes,
Right.
because they need to have all those functionality within
Right.
the home.
Has interest rates at all? Tell us how that's affected the higher end market or middle market or whatever market you want to talk about. Because you and I last year would know that, you saw mortgage rates at 3% or less, or depending on the amortization. And now you're looking at 6 plus or whatever. And that dips, it goes up, it goes down. The yield curve right now, I can't figure out. Long-term rates are
Yeah.
lower than short-term. Prime rates at 8.5. I don't know where it's at actually. Uh, how do you see that luxury market? Does interest rates, or do people mostly have a resale? They're selling their current home. They got good equity in it. How do you see that? Right now?
And that's been a question I've been pondering myself as I try to forecast and figure out what's going on. I'm shocked at this spring market. It is just as busy
Yeah.
as last year's market, which for the interest rates being twice as much,
know.
it's incredible. I didn't see that. I didn't foresee that. I wish I did, because I would have put more holes in the ground
Right.
last summer. But
Right.
I think the demand remains strong and it stays there. And I think that for you and I, we've seen the interest rates. My first home was 6.25,
Okay.
but we had the generation below me seeing interest rates around 3, 2.5%
Right.
for a while there. That their age of consciousness has taken a while to adjust. But if you look at the 90-year mortgage in the United States, the average is still like 8.25,
Right.
8.5 over its history. We're still less than average.
Right.
And if you look at the stock market, if its average return is still that 7% ish, the cost of borrowing is still a little bit less than that.
Right.
And I think people have realized that, and I haven't seen a much change in the demand. And when I've talked to the mortgage and loan officers, what they've told me is they're seeing stronger buyers applying, stronger applicants. And I think that's important too, because I think the big discussion is everyone's saying, are we hitting a housing bubble?
Right.
And I think the answer is no. The banking industry is different. I think we've done enough changes that we're not giving out subprime mortgages, and we're getting actually stronger buyers, and the demand is just through the roof. It's really an exciting time.
Yeah, it's amazing. You would think that you're right about forecasting this year. Of course, in order to do that, you got to start doing last summer. You got to be planning what you're putting in the ground. And you look, did I put enough in? Well, it's good to have them sold, but it is amazing. Rates haven't really slowed it down that much.
No.
And a lot of it could be there's a shortage of new construction.
I think that is a big piece of it. And I think when we measure inflation, which is why we're raising these rates so high, I think we forget how big of a component housing is into that inflation measurement. And that's important to note, because you hit the nail right on the head here. The problem is new construction is usually a year behind.
Right.
Even the rental market is a year or two behind, because people are locked in leases that they signed back in 2021 or 2022 that doesn't necessarily reflect today's market value. So the inflation might already be fixing itself, but when you add housing in, it's hard to see where we're really at. But I have not seen demand come down. I've seen supply numbers come down, and that's where I think there's been more opportunities for new construction, because more sellers are becoming less likely to want to sell right now with higher interest rates to then have to buy a new house. So new construction is a very important component to that market now.
Right. Do you have anything coming up on the parade you want to chat about? Elevation homes.
Yeah. The parade of homes, for viewers that aren't aware, is a great opportunity just to go out, touch, feel, and see what new trends and products are out there. I think it's a great opportunity, even if you're not buying a home, just to get an idea. I think a lot of people come to get ideas for remodeling. So this year it's the second week of June it starts. And so it's 2 weeks, the second and third week of June. I have two builders, Gary Frakes Construction and Elevation Home Builders, have two beautiful parades out on the east side of Iowa City that I highly encourage you to come to.
Off Scott.
off Scott Boulevard there by
Tamarack.
ACT. Yep.
Yep.
And then Elevation Home Builders has 2 whole house remodels. And I think remodel projects are always fun to see how an old structure
Yeah.
could be repurposed to new. And those should be fun and exciting to see.
Good. And that's the second and third week of June.
Second, third week of June.
Great. Cool. You want to tell us a little bit about your subdivision north of town? It's in Iowa City Schools, right?
Yeah.
It's in Coralville, annexed into Coralville. Beautiful subdivision. It's the old Chick Mead Farm, I think, right?
It is.
And tell us just briefly about that. What you're seeing there, size of lots, type of home.
Yeah, that is an exciting project. I'm really excited to see that come up. That is going to be a luxury subdivision. And whenever you're doing an addition to an existing neighborhood, you want to really respect the original neighborhood and try to find a way to make it cohesive and continue. And so Auburn East was the original neighborhood, and it's going to be a continuation of that subdivision, which had a road that had always intended to go through Mead Drive, which is now going to be called Auburn Ridge Road. And working with that ground was challenging for a couple of reasons. First of all, the topo there was very hilly. And of course, when they did the grading, we had a very wet summer. But we were able to get things in, and we're just starting to get holes in the ground here in the next week. And there's 50 homes. And these lots will have an 80-foot minimum width to the front, which is very rare. But we wanted to keep that cohesive with that existing subdivision, that Auburn East. And so there'll be wider lots to accommodate some larger homes. And then about half of the acreage there will be donated back to the city for parkland. There's 3 different outlots and parks that'll be given back. And I don't know if you knew this, but that's the mouth of Rapid Creek at the bottom of the hill down there. So that kind of marshy area.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And that's what school district?
Currently, that's Liberty High School.
Liberty High School.
Yeah.
Okay, just down the road.
Yep.
Great. So if you haven't been by it, it's out Dubuque Street, just a couple miles north of Butler Bridge, right? Or even not even that, maybe a mile and a half north of Butler Bridge.
Yeah, it'll be, and it's annexed into Coralville, so it will be Coralville municipality.
Okay,
so
city services.
Project.
And what's the name of it?
It's called Auburn Ridge.
Auburn Ridge. Okay, great. Well, if you haven't been by Dubuque Street lately, check it out. It's a great subdivision. So,
thank you.
Well, what else do you have? You know, we've talked about construction, interest rates, real estate. Anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to chat about?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to ask you too. Where do you go for innovation? You know, I think a big thing when we talk about coming up with the products for construction or even for real estate, how to stay ahead in your marketing and your different techniques. I think innovation is one of the things that I really pull as one of the personal traits for me personally.
Right.
I'm curious what yours are, and you know, one of those traits to keep innovation going is, what's your inner circle? Who are finding 5 people that you go to help pull in ideas or inspire you, and having a coach to help keep you pushing ahead. And I think that's important. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts on innovation within organizations that you do as well.
To go back before I say answer that is talk about Vegas. You just got back from the home show there.
Yeah.
How helpful was that to see the national home builders and what went on there?
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at being innovative in my own industry, I want to make sure that you're hitting multiple associations and collaborating with as many people as you can. So when you think of real estate, you don't want to think of just sales. You want to think of the builders. You want to think of the loan officers, the banks. And so I went to the National Association of Home Builders. They have an annual international builder show that they host in Vegas, which is in the largest convention center in the world. And it's a great opportunity to just go touch, feel, and see new products. And for me, this is very important to inspire and to get new ideas on what the new trends are, but also just thinking outside of that box and that bigger picture.
Well, it's neat you go there and you bring it back to Iowa. So
there's a bunch of Iowans there with innovative new ideas. I mean, just in town, we have one of just 4 companies in the United States that does these 3D printed homes. I mean, there's some great innovation occurring right here locally. And to see it, touch, feel it, and get to see these different new products coming to life is really exciting.
So you ask about our group. Wherever I go, I'm looking at houses. Wherever I'm going, I'm looking at subdivisions. Just got back from Sun Valley, Idaho. Met with a developer. Yeah. Looking at dirt.
Yeah.
Kind of what I do, I guess. And it was interesting because we looked at some houses. We looked at cost of construction. Same things. Supply chain, can't get labor on it. It's exactly the same world we live in, just a little different venue, a little more expensive in these mountain towns. So I'm always looking at product wherever I'm in Texas. I go to Idaho, Hawaii. So I'm always looking at property. So kind of in my
live and breathe it.
It just doesn't leave you. I've been doing this for 45 years and I'm still fiddling around looking at stuff. So might go into Des Moines sometime, look at different areas. I'm always looking at different types of housing. We did a senior project, that intrigues me a little bit. So when it comes to housing, we're always just striving to learn
Right.
from what's out there. Inner Circle is, we have a great team of leaders at the company that we talk to. I talk to a lot of attorneys, accountants that are kind of in my inner circle. And then another good source is the municipalities, is the planners, the directors, the council, the mayors. They're all help you and they want to work with you.
Absolutely.
And that's my group. And as we wrap up today, just can you think of a place where you've had a better chance to be successful than in Johnson County and Iowa City area as far as real estate and construction?
I'm excited about this area. There's so many opportunities and great things going on, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, construction and real estate in general requires that private and public sector relationship, and it's so important.
Right.
And I think it's easy to forget about that, but it requires all of us working together. And that is a very important part. I think it's easy also to forget that real estate construction is still done by mom and pops.
Right.
That 90% of the homes that are built in the United States are done by a local company, such
Small
as yours
business.
or others, just small businesses.
It's a small business.
And I mean, no other industry has that.
Right.
That grasp 90%. I mean, that's an incredible figure when you think about it. So the importance of the local just communities, it's ingrained in the real estate, in those relationships with the private and public sector. It is a national sport, but it's very localized. And I think that's great when you travel, that you go get ideas and inspiration from other places.
In Johnson County, we'd be remiss not talking University of Iowa. In so many ways, what a fabulous, to add to the area is the University of Iowa. We'd be a lot different look around here without the university. So
absolutely,
with the number of physicians that come in, the professors in and out, all the transientness of the people coming to be educated and leave, the national money that comes in to support all the programs and whatnot. It's just, where else could you want to be?
Small city with big city amenities.
Yep, it's just fantastic. So, well, listen, it's been wonderful to talk to you. I watch I see your Instagrams, the things that you're doing, and I love to talk to the up and comers coming in the real estate construction business. You got it going on. Stay with it. I'm glad you shared a personal story. I know that was difficult, but I appreciate that. So that we could learn from that, and I'm glad you just keep pushing. Get out and see the parades. And one thing I'll leave you with, you're at Leppy Krager, and Gene Krager was a partner and a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. Great guy. You never hear a negative word about Gene. And he always told me, he said, Watsy, he says, you never go wrong owning a piece of real estate in Johnson County. And how true it was that. And Gene owned a lot of property. So anyway, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in, and have a great one.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.